Welcome to Sandwich Reviews. I'm the Talking Sentient Sandwich, and I am counting down the minutes until I can watch Dune Part 2. But I had to go on quite the journey before my eyes could see what people are calling the next best sci-fi epic. Seriously, I don't want to get my hopes up too much, but it's gotta be amazing, right? Well, before we get there, I want to talk about what makes the first one so great. Let's return to 2021, an incredibly messed up year I can barely remember. COVID was in full swing, parts of the world were on fire, and Vin Diesel had hair. Yet for some reason, whenever I try to picture this year, the only thought that comes up is Warner Brothers' commitment to releasing all of their movies on HBO the same day that they were released in theaters, meaning you could watch any of these movies in the comfort of your own home. So that's obviously what I did 90% of the time that whole year. However, there was one movie that I knew had to be seen on the biggest screen possible. Despite it coming out on HBO the night before I was able to go to the theater, I still waited to watch Dune on the big screen. With me, the sound and bass will always be better in a theater environment, and that was the true reason why I needed to see it there, but the director alone still had my interest piqued. Whether or not you're a fan of Denis Villeneuve, you have to admit that the guy hasn't missed. Just watch his entire filmography. Aside from Enemy, which I thought was just plain weird, every single one is a certifiable masterpiece. However, with that comes caveats. Denis Villeneuve's movies take a particular mindset, and I'm not talking about intelligence, that doesn't matter. Film language has always transcended that. Villeneuve's movies are slow burns with very methodical pacing. The mystery that ties these narratives together is often simple, yet also incomprehensibly complex. And depending on the quality of day I've had, sometimes I just don't want to watch something like that. There are days that I want to sit down and watch Blade Runner 2049, and there are days that I want to watch Aquaman, and that's okay. So when I went to the theater in 2021, I remember walking out of Dune not just confused, but a little disappointed. Not in the filmmaking or acting, because I instantly knew that that was incredible the moment I laid eyes on the first few scenes. It was the writing that took me aback. I had heard so many things about Dune, the novel that birthed sci-fi, and would eventually become the intellectual franchise that people would argue over the themes of to prove who interpreted the work right, and I was so intrigued to see what the heck it was. It wasn't until the drive home from the theater that I began thinking about what it all meant, as you should probably do with all movies. Yet this one stuck with me. I couldn't even sleep because I had all these big names and their lofty goals swirling around in my head. Not long after that, I purchased Frank Herbert's novel and began reading. Flash forward 3 years, and I am now a Dune stan, desperate for the release of its sequel. Before I get to why that is, I should say that I think we should normalize changing your opinion on a movie. People should be allowed to have an initial reaction and decide that they were wrong later on. Because while I was way out of line when thinking the movie was disappointing, I think it's completely logical to walk out of Dune being confused. And the reason for this is Villeneuve's trust in the audience. Rarely does the movie stop to tell the viewer what is going on, and the only times it does is to increase dramatic tension between the characters. Over the course of the movie, we hear of terms like the Bene Gesserit, Kwisatz Haderach, the Lisan al-Gaib, the Harkonnens, the Atreides, the Sardaukar, and then there's the Space Guild just getting high on their own supply. Some of those are factions of people, some of those are just the names of families or armies, and two of those mean the same thing. Good luck guessing which is which. No, I'm serious, that's the point of why the world building is so good. Nothing is explained. And because you have to be the one to piece it together, you are immediately more captivated by the characters' decisions. Once you understand why someone is doing what they are doing, odds are you are more likely to root for them. The world building is allowed to breathe simply because it is just never addressed. We just exist in this world. For everything you learn about this universe built by Frank Herbert, there's another wild key detail that changes everything. For example, were you aware that AI machines used to run everything in their civilizations, but it turned the people lazy, so they rebelled against their AI overlords, and now advanced machines are now pretty much illegal? I sure didn't know that before reading the books. That's also why they have mentats, human computers that can process a bunch of data that technically aren't machines. Side note, is Paul gonna be a Mentat in Villeneuve's movies? Did he receive any Mentat training in the first movie? I honestly don't remember. But anyway, let's get back to the world building, because the shields are the best example of that. For me, at least. The fact that their entire way of combat had been upended by the invention of these shields is maybe mentioned once. The exposition that was the reason everyone in this universe uses swords could have been exposited much less delicately. But through those subtle pieces of dialogue and visual hints, you get it. In fact, a lot of the plot hinges on your understanding that when the shield goes red, that's bad. But like I mentioned before, film language can be understood by an unintelligible toddler, because we all know that red probably doesn't mean a good thing.
The slow blade penetrates the shield.
When it's red, dead.
In the climactic battle, the shields are used numerous times for ships and people, and it's something that just exists in the world. If you don't understand what they are and what they do by then I don't know what to tell you. Because 99% of what we see today, whether it's in a TV show or in a movie, we have our hands held the entire time. Other than the obvious exceptions, there's been a real trend towards dumbing down a narrative. I'm not sure if that's just for more mass appeal or if it's laziness on the part of the filmmakers, but I would much rather spend my time wondering what the choices in a movie meant rather than thinking about how annoying it was when one of the characters just sat me down to explain what was going on. If you want to know more about Dune, then you can also do research into it, read the books, or watch countless breakdowns on YouTube. You could even watch the movie again to see just how many layers and details you might have missed. Everything that can be viewed as confusing or unexplained in Dune is either saved for the sequel or said so subtly and offhandedly that it comes off as irrelevant, which is the best thing that you can do when giving information to the audience. Someone shouldn't know when they're receiving an incredibly important info dump. Instead, that information should be camouflaged in with the rest of the dialogue, just like it is in Dune. But those are my 2 cents on why this world building is some of the best out there. If you agree and are just as excited for part 2 as I am, leave a comment and let me know what you think of part 1. Also, I don't know why I waited for the end of this video to say this, but have I been saying Denis Villeneuve's name right? I feel like I'm accenting the right parts, but I could be horribly wrong and making a fool of myself. Either way, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and enjoy a delicious sandwich.